All right. Okay. So I figured I have some stuff that I want to solve about this project, so why not stream while I do it? It's been like 6 months since I did one of these, and things have changed about my project. I actually went through and reorganized all of my projects and split them into kind of separate areas of concern before I had everything in a single Git repository. And I didn't really like how that was. So I split it into a bunch of different Git repositories, and I will show you why I did that here in a moment. But I think last time I went over a little bit of Docker, so this might be a bit of a repeat, but here goes. Yeah, so this was a part of the project, and it is a Kubernetes project. So I'm running it on Kubernetes through DigitalOcean, but it is actually a Node.js. It's written in Node.js, and right now it's very simple. It's just a server that sends a string to the client. But my focus lately has been in getting continuous integration set up. And what continuous integration is it basically lets me check in my code into GitHub, which is, if you're not familiar, a versioning tool that lets you store your code, keep track of versions, update it. It makes collaborating a lot easier, as well as allows you to not make mistakes that break everything. You can just revert things. But basically, I want to be able to check in my code, tag a release in the repository, and then have that code deploy out to the live environment. And I actually have that working. You can see, I have Twitter up right now, but go over. So you can see within this project, I'm using Github Actions, and I have this deploy action, which essentially performs all these steps that eventually culminate into this getting pushed up and being live on the actual techofmany.com website, which, as you can see here, is just that string. This actually is not working currently because I just rewrote everything, but the rewrite should work. I have not tested it yet. I might test it while we're working on this, but also I'm not planning on doing any new code for this, so I won't need to. But I did get it working on another project, so the code that I'm walking you through does work. I just haven't tested it with this particular GitHub repository setup, and I don't remember if I put the secrets in the repository. But yeah, so that is kind of what I've been diving into. GitHub Actions are really cool. They're in this .github workflows, and they have their own syntax, but basically you can write as many of these as you want to, and GitHub will recognize them, pull them up, and run them. The only condition is I think you only get 2,000 minutes on a free account, which is pretty limited. I mean, not for me, because I'm obviously not pushing really ever, but if you're at a place like my work, where we are building basically every time we push any change, and you've got 30, 40 developers doing that, you're going to run out of minutes pretty quick. So that is one limitation. But for my purposes, works perfect. That is one nice thing about GitHub, is they do tend to give you pretty nice free tiers of everything if you're a small developer. It does seem like they really want to encourage small developers to actually use their program. So, what is this doing? Essentially, what I'm doing in the briefest of terms is I am checking out my repository, which is just this code right here. I am running, I'm logging into the container registry, which is, actually this is the part I updated. I was using the outdated GitHub container registry, but I had to basically update it to use the newer, which is this ghcr.io. Before this, I wonder if it shows. Yeah. Before this, I was using the docker.package.github.com, but if you look at their documentation, that's actually being, I think it's called sunset, but it's being end of life here pretty soon, and they want you to use this new GitHub container registry, which makes me kind of wonder, because Kubernetes also just recently started moving away from Docker specifically, and I'm wondering if this move is also connected to moving away from Docker, because Docker recently changed like how they bill everything. So it seems like they're becoming more of a for-profit, and I'm betting GitHub is kind of moving away from Docker because of that, because they don't want it to be dependent on Docker specifically, because Docker is the most well-known of these containerizing solutions, but it's by far not the only one. They're kind of used synonymously, but Docker is actually a wrapper for these containers, but you can use other ones. Oh yeah, nice. I love Docker. Don't get me wrong, like I use Docker because I love Compose, but I do know our work had to change a bunch of stuff too because of Docker updating their billing and making it to where you can only pull a certain number of images based on what your level of subscription is. Yeah, it sometimes does make things a little too easy. But yeah, so we log into the container registry in this step, which is really nice. It has Github Actions have these defined sets that other people have written for you. And so all I have to do is provide it the credentials, and it'll perform the login for me, so I don't have to write the actual scripts. Which is nice, because I was trying to write the actual script before, and it was not working. So this fixed whatever issue I was having, which was nice. Alright, so once we log in, did I miss? Okay, right here. I was like, did I miss a step? I build the image. I was like, how am I pushing an image I haven't built yet? I missed a step. So up here, I run docker compose build. And if you see this matrix image, this is kind of fancy. GitHub Actions let you do this matrix strategy, where I can list, if I have a bunch of different images I want to build, because Docker Compose will let you build multiple images. I can list them out, and it'll build and push each one of these. I actually did that because another one of my projects has 5 or 6 images. One for the MySQL, one for the actual PHP, and one for the, I think it's called adminer, but it's like the MySQL access front end almost. So it's got 3 or 4 different images that I have to build, so it was easier to do that than list them out in every single step. Which you can see I was doing, I think previously. Yeah, I had like the images called out separately. And this ended up being way better, because now I can reuse this in multiple places. But yeah, so I build my image from Docker Compose, log into the GitHub container registry, and then I push the image that I built. So that's this command. And essentially with Docker, you have to label your image where you want to push it, which was really weird to me starting out. I did not understand the concept of this, and it took me a while to figure it out. But it works off of labels on images, and that's how it knows where to push it. So I have this container registry, which is ghcr.io/my username on GitHub. Then I have the image, and then I have the version. And this version that I'm loading into the environment is the version on GitHub. So if you look, when I pushed these, which I'm not actually showing it. Oh my goodness. I'm going to do this a lot, even though I just got a Stream Deck. So when I pushed these, you can see it contains this version. And these are the ones that I did with the new script. And you can see the little icon. These are the ones that I pushed with the container registry. And these are the Docker ones. So they're moving away from the Docker association, which is very interesting. But this was the most recent tag on that repository. And I can go back and look at that repository and show you, which it says it's broken, but that's because one of the, I guess 2 of the jobs failed. I wonder why MySQL failed. Huh. But these ones succeeded, and you can see each one of these steps called out and the printout of these steps, which is pretty cool. And then it verifies itself on Kubernetes. And all right, let's go back to the code. So yeah, I push the image with that label, and then the way that you do deployments in Kubernetes is pretty cool. This takes a little bit of getting used to too, but the basic lowdown of Kubernetes is Kubernetes is basically a bunch of services up in the cloud that you assign images to, and they will take that image, they'll run it using whatever configuration they give you, like you give it, and they'll run multiple versions of it sometimes. So you can tell it, I want 6 versions of this website, and it'll spin out 6 copies of this website. Or I want, I'm trying to think of another example. Like, I want storage on this server. It'll spin you up a little storage node that you can just store files in. So it's pretty neat. And you can find hosts that work with this. I use DigitalOcean, but there are other ones out there. Some might be cheaper, some might be more expensive, depending on what you want. But I have found that Kubernetes is a little more expensive than some of your other virtual private servers. But as an example, the OVH outage, I don't know what that is, I don't think. If you want to share something about it. Because yeah, I don't think I've heard of that, so probably not. Oh, cloud hosting provider? I don't think so. I don't think that they were, but then again, I don't know that I would notice because, yeah, I'm not too on it about my services. But, I mean, obviously, this website's still up, which is the one that I pushed. So, if it was down for a while, I don't know that I would have noticed. Maybe. But work wasn't impacted, so that was nice, because usually that stuff hits work and I'll notice it there before I'll notice it here. But we use Amazon at work and they must not have, either they weren't impacted or our region wasn't. But yeah, so these Kubernetes configurations, you have to give it the image that you want it to build. So what I'm doing here is I am replacing this variable that I put in there, this image, with the image we just built, so that I don't have to go in every single time I want to do a deploy and remember to update that image in the actual file. I'm letting the code in here do it for me. I found that online somewhere, but there was a really nice walkthrough. And if you Google around, you can probably find other methods to do that, but this was a pretty straightforward little command. So what that does is within here, it updates this image to be that actual image. And this is the configuration for Kubernetes. So I'm telling it that I want a service, I'm giving it a name, and I'm giving it a port. And then I'm saying, for this service, which matches on these labels that I have defined up here, for this service, it's going to be a deployment of this image, and I only want one version of it, one replica of it. So I don't have a lot of traffic. At work, I think we run like 4 replicas of our website because we see like millions of hits. I'm seeing me hitting, so it's fine. But if I ever got bigger and needed to scale up, it would be so easy to just say, hey, I want 6 versions of this. And it'll automatically split traffic across those 6 versions, which is super cool if you are building something that you're starting small, but you want to be ready to go bigger, which tends to be a problem when new websites roll out. If you'll notice, a lot of them get hit by that surge of traffic and can't handle it. So yeah, we deploy this, we set it on port 3001. The reason that's kind of random is because I have another one on 3000. I think this Rate My GM, no, my portfolio website, I think is running on 3000. So when I'm running everything at once in Docker, / when I'm running all this in the same Kubernetes cluster, I don't want to use the same port. I want to use different ones. But yeah, so what this does is this updates that line to use the new image. Then we install this DigitalOcean step, which different providers may have different steps. But this one they provide, and I created this access token and put it in my GitHub secrets, which is how you want to do all of your logins. I had to set all this up beforehand because I didn't want to have this streamed. And that's a part of why it took so long to stream again, was because I was setting up all these access tokens and all my Kubernetes secrets and just all this stuff. And then I deploy after I've logged in or installed this Doctel. Yeah, publishing tokens to a live stream or GitHub is huge, oopsie. Unless you are 100% going to remove that token. Yeah, never do it. Not even in a public repo. You just never know. Secrets are always the way to go. And it's nice because most of these will give you that mechanism to do it. Like GitHub has these secrets, and Kubernetes has their own kind of version of secrets, which you can use in your, what's it called? Docker images? No, not in your Docker images. I think you can use it in the actual Kubernetes. I used it in one of these. Hold on. Was it in here? It's not in here. You know what? It's probably in the one I just finished. Well, there's image pull secret. So this is one of my secrets. And it's specifically the secret that allows Kubernetes to pull the image, which is kind of separate. But you can also use your secrets like this. So I have environment variables of MySQL user and MySQL password that reference the username and password within my secrets. So I don't have that checked in at all either. It's all put into Kubernetes, stored away. Nobody has to see it. It's nice. I learned this from our DevOps at work, just watching how they do these things. Because I would have published, or I would have not checked this in. But that would have been a huge pain to not check this in and then have it deploy. So it's good to know that those secret abilities exist. But yeah, so we have our image pull secret here that is regcred. And what that is I gave it basically a similar token to, might actually be the same token that I gave this. Only it's for pulling, not for pushing. So I might have given one of my tokens just pull permissions. But I gave Kubernetes that token so that when it does this, when it applies these configs, which it does by finding them within the GitHub workspace, it will update that file up on Kubernetes, spin up a new version of the pods within that deployment, and use the new image when it does that. And I will show you real quick what that looks like once I get signed in and actually open my Kubernetes. Alright, so you'll see up here we have this Kubernetes dashboard, and this is something that DigitalOcean gives you. A link to up here. And what it does, I'm really hoping nothing on that page is sensitive. I don't think it is, but I'll probably have to check that later. What this is it's a built-in kind of Kubernetes dashboard. And if you install Kubernetes locally, you'll get this. But luckily, DigitalOcean gives me an external thing, so I don't have to install Kubernetes locally, although I could. But you'll see here these deployments, and this is that deployment, and it has a single replica set with a single pod in it. And if I go back and I edit, this is, if you'll notice, familiar in that it's exactly what that previous thing is. We've got spec, replicas 1, matches these labels. We've got our image, our ports, and all of our values, including that image pull secret. So I could, if I wanted to, yeah, it is a really nice way to keep track of all of it. I could, if I wanted to, update this manually. So let's say I have, well, I don't remember the last one that went. I don't think 1.0 worked, but let's just try it anyway. So if I do this, I think I have to update it in 2 different locations if it's similar to work, but maybe not. Nope, just the one location. Okay, so if I update this now, you'll see it's updating, and yeah, so this pod didn't start because I don't have the right credentials for this package manager. So this is broken because I have not updated basically to use this new code that I wrote, but you get the idea where I updated that and it immediately tried to pull that new image, spin up a new pod. It failed, so it didn't stop the, did it stop the old one? It did stop the old one because I told it I only want one. If you have 2, it won't stop both of the old ones. It'll keep one of them running, typically, so that you don't have downtime. I think that's automatic. It might be something you have to configure, but you can configure it to where if this fails, because this fails, you don't kill the old one and you end up not having any amount of downtime. So you'll find that this is now dead because this guy is not running. Yeah, it does make it a lot easier to test. So yeah, Kubernetes is really neat, and it's something that is gaining a lot of traction because it makes it so easy and so, what is the word I'm looking for? Like, easy to be changed. There's a word for it that's better than the one I'm thinking of, but you can change your things easily. A lot easier. So yeah. And you can also, through Kubernetes, you can make cron jobs and alongside your deployments. So that would be if I wanted a job that just runs every once in a while on these deployments. I'm going to be playing with that. Malleable is a good word for it. But yeah, I'm going to be playing with that eventually, but not right now. Another important part of Kubernetes that I didn't realize is just doing the deployment is not enough to get traffic to your site, which is a little bit, there's another word, I'm losing words left and right today. a little shady, I feel like. Not shady on their part, but it's not immediately apparent that you can't just do a deployment and have it immediately be accessible. It makes sense if you think about it, but for the most part, when I first tried to do this, I could not get it to work and could not figure out why. And then I looked up in DigitalOcean's docs, and I eventually found out how to spin up one of these ingresses and how to use that to route your traffic. So I have this ingress, and what this is it's a resource similar to those, but it's a traffic routing resource. Let me go back to the code. So in here, I have the deployment, but I also have this ingress. And this is how you network in Kubernetes. And this is kind of where my problem starts. So this will be a nice lead-in to the problem that I'm running into. So I called it the Tech of Many ingress so that it wouldn't overwrite the rules in my other ones, and I could have separate ingress for the different sites. And I give it rules. First I give it this class, this Nginx class. And what that does is that tells it, hey, I want you to use the Kubernetes Nginx ingress to handle this, whatever pods you're deploying. And then I give it the host rules. And these kind of replace your Nginx configuration. So within my Nginx, I have this configuration that says, for the server, when I hit techofmany.com, I want you to pass it off to this service, this Tech of Many service within the cluster at port 3001. This is doing the exact same thing. It says, when you hit host techofmany.com, we're matching on the prefix of just the root. I want you to go to the service, Tech of Many, on the Kubernetes cluster at port 3001. Network load balancing firewalling can be annoying to do. Yeah, Nginx is a common proxy server. Nginx is really nice. Apache is another that you can use. I used to be Apache, and now I like Nginx better. Just because, no real reason. I've just used Nginx more. And the configurations I feel like are a little easier and a little more lightweight than Apache. Apache has a lot of configuring. And Nginx is used more often, it seems, with Node.js examples. Whereas Apache you'll find a lot in PHP. Yeah. I think a lot of people do. But it's one of those things I think where it's weird that I switched, because usually when you start with one or the other, that's what you stick with. But, yeah, there's a third option, XAMPP, which I don't know if... Or wait, no, XAMPP is, never mind. That's still Apache. I'm thinking of WAMP and XAMPP. Never mind. Ignore that. But yeah, Apache is a lot of times, if you're installing things on Windows, it'll do Apache by default, but Nginx is very nice. Alright, so yeah. We have this Nginx class. I think the way it was set up, this would work fine for my Node.js sites. Because Node.js serves its own static assets. So when you write an Express application using Node, which I might switch to Next.js from Express, but to use the example, Express. when you write an Express application, which is what this is, you give it a location to serve static files from. I think it's res.static. Or no, app.static. Hold on, let me look it up. The joys of okay, yeah. So you have this express.static with the root. So this will serve all your static files from the actual Express application. You don't have to serve your static files through Nginx, which is good. PHP doesn't let you do that. Well, it does if you're not using fast CGI, but the project I was working on this weekend is using fast CGI. And what you run into is, if this wasn't available and I have to serve my files through Nginx, this where's it at? This doesn't let you affect your Nginx image at all. Obviously, because you're referencing something that's already built, that they built. So, whereas in my Nginx, where did I do that? Oh, I did it in the Docker Compose. So when I was doing this, where each one has its own Nginx, not in here. This is a good example. Okay, so in here, I have the site volume right here in my override, in my Docker Compose override. I didn't realize when I was first setting up this on Kubernetes, this is important. So what this does is I'm building my site and my Nginx on the same Docker Compose build using the same context. So when I build this, I create a volume called site, and I assign it everything within this folder, this HTML folder. Then in Nginx, I say, I also have this volume called site. I want everything in there to go here, and I want it to be read-only. What that allows it to do is, this guy, this service, is running on port 9000. It's running something called fast CGI, which I don't know a lot about, but it basically allows PHP to run almost as a scripting language, because normally if you fire up a PHP site, it runs on port 80. It doesn't run on a port. But fast CGI is something, and the only reason I'm using it is because the image that I'm using for this site, which is this MyBB, uses it. So I don't really know what it's doing. Yeah, fast CGI. I don't know exactly what it's doing, but it's serving to port 9000. And unless your Nginx can serve those files, it doesn't work. So the issue I ran into is I'm trying to use their default server for Nginx, but I can't define a volume on it. And if I don't build the image alongside my images, I don't get my files, which is annoying. So basically, the thought I had was, what I could do is I could, for every single one of these projects that need it, which, fair enough, these ones shouldn't need it, I could basically set up another image on top of my other images and create this Nginx image. The problem there is, anytime I create a site that I want to do with this, that I want to do this with, I'm going to be deploying that image. And, although fair enough, so I thought it was going to be a problem that basically every time I deploy this code, I'm also going to have to deploy this image. But actually I want that, don't I? Because if I make a change in here, in these files, I need to make that same change in the volume. And I don't know if that'll be the case in GitHub packages. I'm guessing not, because it packages up under a version and that doesn't change afterwards. It doesn't store those volumes separate. So I think what I'm going to have to do, which talking through this did help, is I am going to have to, at least for this site, create this Nginx image and actually deploy a separate Nginx controller node that is separate from the one that they provide me, which is, let me go to my Kubernetes. Which is, I believe, this guy right here. This is something that their default system creates. And I think I'm going to have to kill this and override it with my own custom Nginx implementation. Which isn't ideal. I would rather not have to do that. But I don't see any other way to get my files into this Nginx container without doing this. Because I just don't think it's possible. Because I don't have any control over this. All of this is something that they set up. So it doesn't really have any volumes. Let me see if I can find the image that they use. Let's see one. Spec. Containers, controller, image right here. Yeah. This Ingress Nginx default controller. The nice part is I think, let me look. In the actual documentation, which is here, this Nginx Ingress controller, you can use these annotations to do different things. Those are located in here, in the actual Ingress deployment itself. you add these annotations. You can see on this one I enabled fast CGI and gave it a different app root because I was trying to get this to work without doing my own custom implementation, and it did not. But oh wait, oh, I did have another solution to this. Oh my god. Sorry. Continuing. Anyway. But yeah, I can give it a, I'm gonna have to remember this. I can give it a, where's it go? Where's it at? An annotation that is, I think, called, yeah, default backend, which gives it a service name. And it basically gives it a service within the Kubernetes cluster that will basically function as the backend. So it'll be that Nginx service that I create. Okay, I just had an idea, and I remembered thinking about this, and I'm annoyed that I forgot that I thought about this. Oh, I wasn't on the, every time, I'm gonna do this every time. So yeah, here's the annotation section, and we have this default backend annotation that we give a service name in the cluster. And if we add that to the annotations in our Ingress, it'll reference that service. The idea that I had that I completely forgot about until right now is what I figured I could do. Kubernetes has the concept of storage. So if I look at here, I had to do this within the MySQL, but I create this thing called a persistent volume claim. And I give it a name, I give it labels, similar to everything else, and I give it a size. And then my deployments can reference that. So I have a volume here within my deployment that shares that storage. This is why I set this up like this. I forgot about that. So what I was thinking about doing was creating an image, basically a separate repo that I can deploy independently, and pushing these Kubernetes controllers up independently anytime I create a new site. So all it would have is it would have my configurations, and it would have a reference to that volume, basically, within the deploy, which I have not created yet. And what that would let me do is, whenever I'm within a cluster, I could essentially say, for this service, I want the root to be, let's say, just /Tekameni. I forget how to do a server root. Let's look. I completely forget how to do it. Right here. So I could make this root. something like www tech of many. And then I could create a Kubernetes shared storage. And I could say the directory www points to the shared storage within Kubernetes. And anytime anything, any cluster on here wants to give anything to Nginx, it puts it in its directory of that. And that would essentially let me, whenever I deploy this, I could push up the code changes without having to redeploy my Nginx pods, which I really like. So I might end up doing that. The only risk I could see with this is if something goes wrong, I'll have broken files. So you might not want to do this if you have a super important website that you're pushing. You'd want to like maybe use some kind of versioning on these files to make sure you still have the old and the new, just in case these get pushed and overwritten, but you don't have the new image up. But for my purposes, I feel like this would be fine because I'm not doing anything super professional on this. So I think that's how I'm going to solve this. So I can create this and have it follow the same as everything else. And I can use, I'll have to create 2 different deployments because I created a completely separate Kubernetes cluster for this just in case I ever want. This is kind of a collaborative site. A few of us run this together, so I wanted to make sure that I could offload this in case, you know, something in the future changed. I didn't want to have it be 100% mine. Oh yeah, that's kind of, they do. Well, depending. So K8s essentially has a similar concept of volumes to, the best way to describe it is they have a similar concept of volumes as Docker Compose, which is, I brought up the example here, you create, alongside your deployment, you create a volume claim. This one is a persistent volume claim, which is essentially, I want it to stay even when this service restarts. I want anything in here to stay, which is necessary for a database. But you can use the same concept for files because all this is files that you're referencing as a volume. So it's basically saying I have this MySQL job that references for its storage, which this is where they kind of store SQL files. I want to store it within this persistent volume. So what I could do is I could create one of these persistent volume claims on my cluster, and any one of my deployments can reference it. So I could say, for example, this one is one I'm using as my example here. In here, I want to, first off, let's just create a deploy because we're going to want to do this anyway. Create a deploy folder. We'll just do an Nginx. Actually, we'll call it custom Nginx. And the reason why I name my file the same thing as my deployment is because within this workflow, I didn't want to have to redefine it. So when I grab the file from my deploy folder, I grab it based on the image name. So I'll call this image custom Nginx to separate it from whatever other Nginxes they have running. Yeah, right? That just kind of saved me because I completely forgot that was a thing. So I'm just going to grab what I had defined in that MySQL and copy it. The only bad thing about this is you have to pay for it. It might be the same on other providers, but with DigitalOcean, let me go into where I have one of these. I have to go into my other account. So when you do this in DigitalOcean, it creates this block storage, and this is essentially a microcharge based on how much space you're using. But you can do nice things like take snapshots of it, transfer it to another service, like another account. So there is some nice stuff you can do, but it is another microcharge. Fortunately, it costs less than this, which is the managed databases. It does cost less than that, but you don't get the nice, they're managing it for you. You have to create your own. So, good and bad. One thing I've found working on this is when you create an app through Kubernetes, watch what your provider needs, because in order to make a MySQL database, I have to get this volume, which is a certain amount per month. I also have to create a load balancer, which is $10 a month, in order to serve traffic to my cluster, and then I have to pay for the actual Kubernetes cluster. So, I mean, it's still pretty cheap, but something to keep an eye on if you decide to go with Kubernetes. Yeah, it could add up. And I have two separate projects, so this one is $449, and my other is at $12. So, not bad by any means. Still comparable to a lot of VPSs, but if you start really spinning up things, you're going to want to get creative at how you reuse things. Like, I could have left the other site on mine, and then I could have used the same load balancer, the same volume for all my MySQL. But like I said, I want to be able to hand it off and not have it connected to any of my personal work. So that was kind of a decision I made to accept the cost in order to be able to just separate it. Yeah, running it out of home, it's neat. It's cool to practice with. That's a whole other set of skills that I would like to learn, but that'll be down the line because, yeah, network administration and doing security with it, whoo boy. Not only is that a lot, it's stressful and you have to know a lot. That is admittedly an area that I do not know a lot about, is network security. Oh yeah, leftover Raspberry Pis or Dell servers. I've never worked on Dell servers. Funny enough, the only server, really like heavy server stuff I've done has been mostly on a Mac server, because in college our physics department had a Mac server that they let me use. And let me tell you, I spent my entire spring break trying to configure an Apache Mac server to work with WebSockets, and that might be why I like Nginx better. It just turned me off of that a little bit. Yeah. All right. So we have our persistent volume claim here, the static claim. We're going to call it Nginx. App Nginx. I don't know if I want to... See, they have these tier labels, but I don't think I want to add that just because it's a volume. I don't know. Also, I don't think these tier labels are entirely correct that I'm labeling because, I don't know, is Node.js front end or back end? Both? Can you have front end without a back end? I mean, questions. Because technically you're running a server, but... And when would you ever have a purely front end deployment? Anyway, whatever. But yeah, so yeah, your tiers. And then you have your, which I don't know if I'm going to give this a tier or not. I mean, I guess technically an Nginx server would be a backend, but since I'm calling my other things backend too, I feel like it's lying. There's probably a correct term for it. A server. Actually, work probably uses the correct term. Now that I'm thinking about it. Okay, 3 dashes. I don't know if the number of dashes is important or not. Sometimes the YAML files could be picky. Okay. So, I'll just leave it blank for now. Oh, I was going to call it custom Nginx app Nginx tier. I feel like they're... Oh, you know what the tier is? I bet it's HTTP. Because it is the bridge. So this is just basically saying, I get a request, I'm serving it to this backend. That's what they call it. It's the HTTP tier. Yeah. So, nope. Copied the wrong one. Custom Nginx. Still one replica. Still using the same labels. And you'll notice that I can just copy and paste this, even though one is MySQL and one is Nginx, because everything important, essentially, at the moment, is within this image and within the environment, but I'm not going to worry about that quite yet because I don't think that's important right now. I get the feeling that if I look up how to actually properly fire up Nginx and Kubernetes, there's some security things I need to worry about, which is why I was hoping to use the default one, because if you can get someone else to code something for you, do it. Because they know the security stuff that you don't know about this stuff. But, alright, it's going to be on port 80. And image pull secret does apply. Volume mounts apply. And right, we need to give it the actual name of the volume. The example I had put this claim at the end of it. And we're gonna do it. Actually, where do I keep it in my... What's my working directory in my current configs? On here. So I just want to use the same working directory for all of them. So in here, I use, here. There, www.html. I don't know if that's more proper or not, but that seems to be the pattern that they follow. All right. So, got that. Got that. Gotta recall this. Static files. Cool. So, we have a deployment. We have a persistent volume claim. And then we need to create a service. I do this all in the same file because you can't, it doesn't make sense to deploy one without deploying the rest. So you'll notice I have things separated by like application deployment, because anytime you're deploying this, you're also going to be deploying this. Although this might not change. The service might be completely unchanged while the deployment is not. And I can show you, Kubernetes is smart enough to notice that. So when you deploy, you'll see deployment.app/wolfrpg configured, service/wolfrpg unchanged. So when it applied that configuration, it said, well, the image of the deployment changed because I changed the image, but the service remained unchanged, and so did the ingress. However, if I were to like change the port or change these labels, then it would redeploy the service. Although I think if you change the labels, it yells at you and says that you can't do that, and you have to delete the entire deployment and redeploy it, which isn't the end of the world, but it is kind of annoying. That is a thing that has to happen. Okay, so app is Nginx. I don't know why I'm calling it. Should I just keep it Nginx? Yeah, that'll be fine. That's what's running on it. There's some stuff that if somebody who uses Kubernetes a lot saw, they might be like, what are you doing? This always needs to be the same as your name. But I don't think that's the case. Because I think you can name your service and your deployment two separate things, and it's fine. Okay, HTTP, we're going on port 80. Cool. All right. So this, then I believe we'll be able to deploy to both of my clusters, and it will be running the same thing. And I'm going to make this that seems reasonable. 5 gigs to start on each, and then hopefully I won't need to go up, because apparently when you create storage on Kubernetes you can go up but you can't go down. So I'll start low-ish and then go up, even though that is probably way more than I will need. But this will allow me to use the same one for no matter how many sites I spin up on here. And I have to take into account that, at least on this site, it's a forum software, so people can upload avatars and stuff like that, so I'll have to leave space for that. And it caches a bunch of stuff, so this might end up being larger, but I don't think it'll get bigger than 5 gigs. especially if I turn off the database backups. All right, because I'm doing database backups a different way. Cool. So we have a service, we have a deployment, we have a volume claim. Now, what I think I can do, what I hope I can do, is, all right, this is within container. So if I copy this and I paste it here, no, not here, in here, all right, I'm going to leave it with the name of static files because it makes sense. And I'm going to point it to, oh, okay, see, this is gonna, I wonder if you can name a place within this volume that things are being written to, or if I'm gonna have to have a subdirectory, you know? Like, so my Docker Compose has the build context as just the root of here. So it builds everything from the root. And it copies over this source directory and the dist. But what I might have to do, unfortunately, is instead of working directory being source, I might have to do working directory tech of many, and then have the mount path just be the root so that it grabs that subdirectory. But I feel like there should be a way in your volume to put a location on here. Let's look. In the Kubernetes volumes section. Right. Obtain, recycle, reserving a persistent volume. Okay, so we did that. Oh. No, that's with the namespace. Oh, it might not be in here. It might be in deployments. Nope. Containers. Container runtime. Okay. So this looks familiar. Pre-pulled images, specifying image pull secrets. This is the command that you use to create that. It does not say, does it? Huh. Workloads. Okay, here we go. So it's in volumes. Okay, so we have a volume mount path name. See, these are all config map, which I don't think works. Empty dir, I don't think we care about that. I was hoping we could say in here no. Host path is not what we want, I don't think. Because that's basically, I think, kind of like a... Okay, here we go. Persistent volume claim. Really? Binding using I don't see it. I don't see a way to do it. Okay, so we might have to just do it using, oh, containers, volume devices. I don't know what a raw block volume is, admittedly. So I don't think that that's what we want. Yeah. Okay. So it doesn't look like we can do a location in a volume. Storage capacity. I could look it up, but for now, we will just do it this way. Not ideal, but it works. So essentially the entire site code will be delivered into here. Because we build it and then we copy that built code into this working directory, which I think will work because we're essentially just saying whatever we're serving up as the final version of this, we want to copy into our Nginx. So I would want to do the same thing on these other websites. Okay, cool. And then we mount that up into HTML. So I feel like I'm basically kind of recreating. Have you ever worked with shared hosting where basically you have a directory like this and every website has its own user file for the user? I feel like that's kind of what we're recreating. Like each one of my websites is going to have its own directory that it serves from within here, which is pretty cool. All right, so we have our configs in here. We have our deployment. And now I'm wondering, so this server is going to handle our traffic splitting, which I don't love. And I don't love that for a reason. I'm gonna have one node, one Nginx node running on each cluster, right? So I'm essentially, I'm essentially going to be losing out a little bit on some of the splitting. In a way. Because what makes sense to me is right now our Ingress is handling the routing. But that's not going to be the case anymore. Our Nginx server is going to be handling the routing. So our Ingress isn't going to be doing anything now. Although, no, that isn't the case. That isn't the case. I think what I can do... Yeah, it might just be double routing. So, yeah. Well, I give it a back-end service, right? Let's go look at this. Where was that? Not the GitHub link. Not the actual docs. Okay. So the annotations, right? I give it a default backend. Within the code. Right here. And I would give it, right? Because that is the service name. So what I think happens is I could leave this off, or I could define it twice. And I think what I want to do is I want to leave this off. Although I might want to verify that and look it up. Because it doesn't make sense to have the rules in two places. And I don't know that these rules would be applied, but I don't know how these rules are applied within the current setup. So I'll leave it for now. But my thinking is that these guys are going to handle it when they deploy, when all this config gets copied over. And the rest of it is just default. The last thing that is a question is, so I have this deploy, I have the configs, but I want these in there too. Because I'm going to use the same for both clusters, essentially. I'm just going to be deploying this exact same server in two different places. Because I figure it doesn't matter if you hit this URL, you know, in the wrong spot, on the wrong cluster. It'll just 404. You know, it won't. Those requests will never go there, essentially, because of the way the DNS resolves. So like requests to techofmany.com won't make it to that. Although, oh, I can't do that. I do have to have 2 different builds because it'll yell at me if I don't have an upstream available. Wait, no. Yes, it will. It will yell at me if I don't have an upstream available when I go to start up the node, not when I build it. So I do need to do 2 separate Docker files, 2 separate configs. So I basically need to build 2 separate images, which is kind of annoying. All right. I was hoping to get away from that to avoid it, but that's okay. Okay, so I'm gonna create. I'm gonna create personal, I guess, because this is kind of my websites. And then, all right, config. It's gonna go in there. Config is also gonna go in here. And we're gonna delete. And delete. What I'm doing here is I'm making a separate build context for each one of these so that I can not have to worry about defining a Docker file location, and I can just say, hey, it's the same, right? Yeah. So I can delete this, and then I can say, all right, so why does this have an override? Oh, we'll get into that in a minute. Okay, so one of these is going to be there, and one of these, oh, but that's going to create 2 separate images, which means I'm going to have 2 separate deployments. All right. I wonder if there's a way to make it not error when you don't have an upstream, although that's a really bad practice. And I feel like yeah, it is. It is getting more complicated than it needs to be. Really, I only need it for the one application, but I want to build it for the 2 ahead of time because I know I'm going to need static files in more of these. Don't error on no upstream Nginx. Okay, let's see if this has an answer for us. One of these apps is not started, then it fails to stop. If you use a static IP using the resolver directive, resolve it at the location level. Oh. So it looks like we can maybe do this. So we might be able to get around. Okay, that's the ideal. So it won't error if my applications aren't running, but that's okay because like I said, I'll know I'll hit the site, it won't be there. I don't need Nginx to yell at me. So, all right, we're gonna not do that. We're just gonna make one single thing and not worry about getting complicated. Okay, cool. We're gonna hack our way around that. So basically I'll have to go in and make sure that if port 9000 isn't running, it doesn't throw an error at me and say, hey, we can't start this because you're missing a thing. But I'll worry about that later. Because for now, really the last thing I want to do is get this set up. All right, so for this, my image is going to be custom Nginx, and that's the only one. But I have to do two. So I have to deploy personal, and then I have to deploy Wolf RPG, because this is going to be the same image, the same tag, everything is going to be the same, except where to go? Different cluster. All right. Makes it super easy when you use these environment variables and you set up everything to where it's super generally named. So I just have to remember when I go in and I make a repo, because this isn't a repository yet, because I just created it, I will have to add a secret for the package registration token and a secret for my DigitalOcean access token, which I will go in and do later when I'm not on stream. Cool. I don't think I want to save that. No, don't save, because that was me getting complicated. Okay. Alright, so it's set. I've got my Nginx configurations. I've got my deployment. I will eventually copy all my ingresses in here because I think it makes more sense to deploy my ingresses when I deploy my actual... maybe not though. I'll have to think about that. It'll depend on how I handle the routing, because it might make more sense to deploy my ingresses when I deploy my Nginx if they have to be one-to-one. But if not, I'll leave them in their little respective programs as like partial, because then they're together. And then if I delete this project, I also delete the Ingress, and I don't have a bunch of random project code in my Nginx. So, yeah. I'll have to think about that. But, alright. So I've got that set up. I think the last thing I want to do is figure out how to get my Docker Compose working again. and this is kind of something I wanted to talk through also. So what I was doing was I was using compose to override and run an Nginx server when I run Docker Compose. Easy. Hold up. Delete. So I only need the regular version of this. I don't need an override because I shouldn't really have to run this locally. What I can do is, well, wait, hold on. I might have jumped the gun on there. No, I'm right. I'm right. What I need the override for is the separate volumes, but again, I can just toss that in here and ignore it. Okay, cool. So in here, I have my override. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way out and I'm going to make that my repo, my Docker context. So that when it builds that Docker image, it will pop into there and build it there. Awesome. Awesome, awesome. Also, this doesn't need to be there. Because the reason I was using that was it gives, in Docker Compose, when you give it an image, it'll name your thing that image. But I don't need that for this Nginx because I'm not going to be pushing this to anything. It's just for dev. Whereas in here, my image actually has a name, which is actually going to need to update too. Let me grab that. Yeah, right here. So what I did was, I didn't realize this, but you can use environment variables in your image names. And this saved a whole lot of me relabeling images that were already labeled, because I was building them to the name ... latest and then relabeling them, and now I get to skip that entirely by, when I'm building locally, I build it to local / name ... latest. But when I'm building them on the server, I build them to where'd it go? This / image name ... version. So that's a nice little cheat that you can do to skip on the relabeling. All right, so in here, that, and I'm just gonna call it MongoDB actually, because Kubernetes-DB is not specific enough, I feel like. Is it MySQL? Is it Mongo? We don't know. Okay. Cool. Now if we build it, it will fail. But let's see. I have this set up. I need to nest this a little less. Oops. What did I? Okay. What's in here? Oh. Aha. Okay. Old projects. Oh man. All right. So I'm in here. I want to go to, nope. Oh, so what I did, that's kind of fun. Yeah, right, my secure Mongo password. Luckily the .env is local. What I did was, I'm using OBS, and I created a filter, a color filter for the overlay, and then put a screen capture of the PowerShell on top of it, and have both of those tied together in a, what's it called? In like a Stream Deck pop-up. So yeah, OBS has, what are they called? Backdrops. No, not backdrop. Yeah, it's a color something. But yeah, I thought it gave a nice little focus to the PowerShell. Oh, right. I turned off Docker on startup because it uses a lot of resources. So it is starting up now. It will beep at me when it's done. Well, it will beep at me when it's starting to work, and then it'll beep at me again when it's done. Oh, there we go. Open PowerShell and start hacking with Docker. Oh my. All right. Oh. Invalid reference format. Okay. So, what did I do? Where's it at? Weird. So it said unknown. Oh. Okay. Hold up. Copy. Paste. And then these guys can go in there too, because this is just my local values. And then what I'll do is I'll go in here. It should already be in here. I want to make sure. Yep. Right there. Definitely want to make sure your .envs and stuff get ignored so that you're not sharing them. And then, whoops, I forget the exact notation. Hold on. Right here. Environment file. Let's So in our override, I will give this that environment file, and I will give this one oops. YAML. Alright, now, yeah, right, it is a cursed format. Aha! Building. It'll probably fail. I'm guessing it will fail because of the upstreams, which will be a good way for me to test that, because if I like this a lot, because now if my things run locally, they will run on the actual server. Whereas before I was using two separate methods, and I don't love using two separate methods to serve my sites. It was fine once I got it down, but I like having full control of my Nginx configurations, for better or for worse. Which is dangerous, but it's fine. It'll be fine. Oh, I'm not on CMD. I got the stream deck specifically for these coding streams because I got tired of hitting my keys and having them show up. Oh. No such file or directory. Did I not npm install? Did I forget? I forgot to npm install. Oh boy. Okay. No, I didn't. It's right there. Huh. Did it die? Run npm install. Added 50 packages. Copy from builder. Huh. Weird. So it installed them. But it can't find them. That's strange. I don't know why that is. So I did change this up some recently. See where let me, just to see this work, I'm gonna revert this because I think I can. I was trying to be fancy and do like multi-layer Docker builds, but apparently that's not happening. There we go. Cool. Yeah, see? Host not found in upstream. We're getting all those messages. Whew. Exited with code of 1. Because it didn't find anything at that upstream. But let's see. Yeah, no, because we didn't get it running technically. It's not there. And if I go to my dashboard here, which is really nice, everything's running except for Nginx, which makes sense because it didn't find those. So I will have to find that fix, but this, I didn't even think of this fix going into this today. I was so worried that I was gonna have to do something weird. But pointing back at that within all of these is gonna be a way easier way to fix that than anything else I would have done. So good on us for thinking of that. Because, oh boy, I was sitting here like, man, I'm gonna have to figure out how to run Docker Compose on like multiple things. I'm gonna have to create a bash script to run all my composes, but then they're gonna be in separate clusters, and how am I gonna do that? Not thinking. But now I'm thinking. So, cool. And the best part is for this one, not this one, this one, this defines the volume. So I don't have to worry about defining the volume within there. So I can set up all my different volumes to reference right here. Or whatever I called it, wherever I put it in here. Let me see. It was in deploy. Yeah. So the mount is going to be the exact same, which means that I can, first off, where am I creating that? Too high of a level. Oh my gosh, jeez. What I was basically saying was, in here, I can point at that context. Yeah, right? I can point at this context and still have my volume pointed at the same spot. Oh, right here. Var www.html as this. So I will get the exact same behavior that I would have gotten, you know, that I'll be getting on Kubernetes, I'll be getting in this, only the volumes are on my local system as opposed to being, you know, out in the wild. I wonder if I can specify read-only on here, but I don't think I want to because, like I said, they might be uploading avatars and stuff. So I want Nginx to be able to write to this static file, so I think that's fine. Okay. Unless fast CGI handles that. I don't know. I don't know how fast CGI works. I need to look that up. Okay, so I created a git ignore, and I'm gonna add, what's that? No. This. So that all those files we're adding don't get checked into the repository. Okay. Wait. don't think they will, actually, because it's a shared directory, so we don't actually create it in the file system. So never mind, I don't need that. I don't know what I'm thinking. Because this is a... Hold up. This is a... Yeah, this is a volume mount, which means it doesn't get created, and then these guys are bind mounts. So these guys I would have to worry about, but this one I do not, because it's defined down here. Cool. Okay. So that's that. And it's set to read only for now, but I might change that, depending. I think that's everything on this, except for figuring out how to not die when our server things die. So I will figure that out, get this hopefully deployed up, because I have to mess with keys and stuff to do that. And then I will check back in a bit and let y'all know how it goes. I hope that was useful. I was only going to go till 8 because I need to do some cleaning tonight and actually be productive today, because I worked all day and now have been doing this. But thank you for joining me. Thanks, Felda, for chatting with me. I feel like I know you, but I don't know your Twitch name. But I appreciate you always jumping in and chatting with me. Yeah, okay, IRL. Oh my god. I will. You'll have to text me or something. Oh! Holy Michael! That's unexpected! Oh my god. Hi. I had no idea who you were. That's amazing. Well, thanks for chatting with me, and I appreciate it. I hope that these are somewhat entertaining to you and anyone else who may be lurking or hopping in and out or putting me on. Hey, cool. Cool. That is what I go for. Alright, well, see y'all next time, and have a good rest of your night.